So the individual portion of the Olympic Games is over, and I have some stats to show you because when I was watching the event, I think it was on day 3, I was watching the Swedish boy play, and all of a sudden I looked at myself, or I looked at Kalita, and I was like, hey, you know, this is a really exciting match. And I went, oh, both people have scored. And then it dawned on me that, you know what, this might be the first time I'm actually seeing a match where both players have scored. So that's why I've been throwing a lot of these stats into the bracket sheets, especially starting on day 3, was because I started to notice a trend. And now let me show you what that trend kind of looks like when we break it out here on paper. So on the men's side of the bracket here, we have a total number of matches of 221. Of the 221 matches, 86 of those matches went to golden score. So I'm gonna call it 40%. So in all of men's judo, 40% of matches are going to golden score, just as of train of thought. And then 46% are guaranteed that one of the players is gonna have 2 Shidos, if not both, okay? Now, the other crazy stat and why I threw it out here was this one. Both judokas score, okay? That means I've thrown them for Wazari and they've thrown me for Wazari within the match, okay? Now, that could mean a ton of different things. It could be pins for Wazaris and then somebody scores or whatever the case may be. But look at this, 7 matches. Actually, that is probably inaccurate. I probably forgot to add the heavyweights and 100 kilos to this. So if I remember right, there were two matches in the 100 kilos. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, it's not into double digits. So of 221 matches, we're looking at less than 10 matches where both players scored. So when you're training, when you're thinking about preparation, you have to think, hey, should I be doing judo for 4-minute rounds? Well, maybe not, because 40% of the time, remember, you're probably looking at going to golden score if you're a man. Okay, so that's just something to think about. Like when we look at these guys' stats right here, okay, you have to use kind of this data to say, how am I gonna best train for competition, right? The idea is score first, score early. So if you think about the flow of a match where we start here and then it goes and then it does this, right? So we have a beginning and an end. At some point, right, what's happening, I think, to the athletes is this. They're starting the match and they're like, you know what? If I'm about 1/3 of the way through the match, I'm gonna score. So I'm gonna put an S there for scoring, okay? And then as this match continues its way to golden score, what's happening is athletes start taking less risk and they start worrying about energy preservation. So when golden score starts and they continue through, now they're gonna start with the idea of, hey, I just need 1 score now. And so when you think about it, when you think about this, both judoka scoring, 40% of all matches in men's judo only require 1 score because they're in golden score, right? So that means 60% of the matches, right, are requiring, what is that? We'll call it of the 60, maybe 90% of the 60 end with 1 person scoring. So the idea behind that is, let me change this color again. What we're looking at is, let's say this is 0 and this is 4 minutes. Okay, I'm in green now. Okay, we're ignoring the rest of it, right? I would be interested to see, and of the matches where I saw both people score, let's say I saw somebody score right here on this red line. I would almost instantaneously see the other player come back. A good example of that is if you go to the 81 kilos and you watch Cass of Belgium, he is 2 of these matches. 2, because he got thrown in the first round. An exchange or 2 later, he got back to score, and I think he ended up going into golden score in one of them and then eventually scoring again. And then there was another match where a guy had won, but then he did it right here. There was no time left on the clock, but he was able to get that score. So your best chance when you're thinking about this is the longer you go from somebody scoring on you towards the end of the match, the less likely it is that you're going to win, because when you look at what happened, again, this is one tournament, they're most likely to be thrown an exchange or two after having been scored on, specifically for the men. So just something to pay attention to when you're looking at the meta of judo, that you should probably, if it was me and I was an athlete and I'm looking at training, I'm probably thinking like a good match time to like use for preparation is 6 minutes. And I'm using that just because when you're looking at getting into golden score, there's 4, and then you're probably going a minute and a half past that before you see a lot of the scores start to happen. I didn't go that deep into the numbers to say when, but just something to pay attention to. And now when we look right here, check out my accuracy, okay? We predicted 142 correctly of the 221 matches, which led to a 64% like pick rate throughout the entire event. Now, I will say that with a grain of salt, because there were some areas, right, where, you know, and YouTube ate me up for this, and the 73 kilos specifically, because they were like, you missed all the predictions. Well, at the end of the day, 3 of the people I picked for medals ended up on the podium, just in different orders, because I wanted to see an Ono final, and the Korean actually, you know, didn't get there. So when one person misses out that you throw into the final just because it's a match you want to see, you end up missing out. I wanted to see Zantaraya go all the way through and get his Olympic medal. He fell short, so it skewed some of these numbers. But when we take a look at the women, right, and we blow this up, check this out. We had 217 matches, 149% accuracy, and 69% pick rate. There were a couple of divisions where I was just like off my mark. Like I was off. There were like 25, 28 matches, and 12 of them were wrong, right? Like 50%. But for the most part, some of these divisions I picked pretty accurately. But they do have better like overall stats as far as, you know, number of matches going to golden score. Double Shidos, right? We're at 25 and 30%. Here we're at 39 and 46%. Okay, so if we compare the 25% to the 46, and then the 30 to the 46, I'm sorry, the 25 goes to the 39. Okay, so 25 to 39 and 30 to 46. Okay, so the women are ending matches sooner for, you know, whatever reason that may be. And I will say that if we remove the heavyweight division from all of these stats, the numbers go up, because the heavyweights only had 1 or 2 golden score matches, period. Most of them scored in the first 4 minutes. So if you're looking at the lower weight classes, you'll see these numbers just jump through the roof. But interestingly enough, when we look at the judoka scoring, there's actually less. Okay, we're only at 6 matches. Again, that might not be updated because I don't think I hit that number for the next 2 days. But if I jump over here, right, this I did update. So maybe I did, maybe I didn't. So here is the weight categories where you can go back to the IJF, or if you have a streaming software or something where you can watch the Olympics, you can go back to these divisions, check it out. No, nothing in 60, nothing in 66. We have 2 in 73. We have 3 in 81, but the Belgium player is responsible for 2 of those. We had 1 at 90. I made a mistake in my review video. I missed one, but here it is. And then we had 1 here at the plus 100 kilos. And then for women, you can see the breakdown here as it's going through. Just something to, you know, pay attention to if you're looking at your weight class, and how it breaks down and how it compares to the other ones as far as your ability to be able to come back from a match that you're currently down in, because it is very difficult to score on people. But the more difficult thing is to score on somebody that A, is purposely trying to not be throwing and just looked active enough to get a Shido or to not get a Shido, right? So when you think about judo as a whole, when we're looking at, let me pull out a pen here and change this color. When you're looking at a 4-minute match, okay, and you're thinking about the mentality for judo is every 30 seconds, somebody should have a meaningful attack, okay? Whether that's you or the other guy, somebody should have a meaningful attack. 30 seconds. So if you score at the minute and 30 mark in a judo match, and you've only got one Shido on the board, right? It's a gripping thing, maybe it's Shido, and then you throw them for Wazari. Think about how difficult it is in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, knowing that the referees are trained to give Shidos out every 30 seconds for inactivity, okay? So you have, what is this? You have 5 exchanges to actually beat your training partner or to beat your opponent in a judo match. Now, of those 5 exchanges, I need to have at least 2, where am I gonna put that? 2 meaningful attacks. Well, that was a terrible, right? Let me just shrink, okay. So you need to have 2 attacks within that 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's it, and then it's game over. Because as we're gripping, as we're doing stuff, and again, this is just arbitrary because exchanges do happen more often than 30 seconds, but if the mentality is I'm already ahead, when I move, right, think about the actual like meta of judo, okay? When you're going through an exchange, right, ref says Hajime, we start here. Okay, let me change that color. There we go, you start here. Okay, we're moving along this timeline. I'm moving along the timeline. We grip, we move, we fake, we move, we attack, exchange ends. Potentially, but newaza, okay? Big component of this whole like one score mentality, because even if I don't do newaza and we follow this timeline, let's say I move for 5 seconds. Let's say we grip for 5 seconds. Let's say I fake for 5 seconds. Let's say I attack 5 seconds because I'm driving, I'm doing stuff, whatever the case may be, it's a good round number. That whole thing takes 20 seconds, okay? But what happens when the person who does the attack is the person who needs the score? Well, now I have the ability to be on top of my partner and I can burn the clock for, let's say, another 5 to 10 seconds. That right here, if I could get to the 10-second mark, is 40 seconds off of this. And that's one exchange. That means after the 40 seconds, we go through this again. 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. He gets another one. I go another 40 seconds, okay? A minute 30. We have a minute left in the fight. When you think about judo and how we think about it as a whole, if they attack twice and they do another third meaningful attack, I'm probably gonna get a Shido for stalling, okay? Great. Let's just say for argument's sake, right, that we go through this whole sequence again, but there's no newaza, and I'm down another 20 seconds. Okay, no problem. That's a minute and 40 seconds of this entire time. I get the Shido for stalling. Okay, now I've gotten a Shido. So I started this match off with 1 Shido. It took you, I scored at the 1:30 mark. It takes you, what did we say, a minute 40. Now I'm at Shido number 2. So here's 1, here's 2, my yellow cards on the board. Okay, let's say we come out for exchange number 4. What are the odds? What are the odds that the referee goes, hey, I just Shidoed you for stalling. On the next exchange, I'm going to Shido you for stalling again. Very minimal, which means you have another, let's call it 20 seconds to kill because you're rushing the clock. Okay, so when we look at this, okay, we have now 2 minutes left on the clock. There's 30 seconds to go. Don't forget, me as the person winning, I still haven't attacked. I haven't done anything, right? So it's when you just look at the timeline of what happened in the 4-minute mark and what the players are doing is once they score, their clock management kicks in and their gripping, their movement, and their newaza. You could see Abe do this when he threw the Mongolian. There was short time on the clock. He didn't want to let the Mongolian up and do another round. So what do? You just see him kind of like shaking and bouncing and tilting and just shaking. You're like, Abe doesn't do that. But then you see the 6 seconds on the clock, you see the 5 seconds on the clock, you see the 4 seconds on the clock, and all of a sudden, match is over, Abe wins on the Wazari. Okay, so players are starting to realize this timeline, and they're starting to use it into their effect, which is why we're seeing less and less of the actual double scores because there's not enough time on the clock to actually get somebody that third Shido based on the meta of how refs are reffing and how the players are fighting. Okay, so there's that. Let's take a look here. I pulled up the actual stats of the last Olympic Games. So as we look here through the Olympics, and we're doing this, okay, right now, Japan is number 1. Let me erase that. Let's put the highlighter back out here so we can see it. Right here, Japan, number 1, stayed number 1, okay? France, arguably still the number 2 country. The only reason why they're not up this board is it weighs gold medals more than overall medals, okay? But when we look here, France has 2, 4, 5. France here has 6 and 7. So France actually outperformed, even though they don't have that second gold medal. Again, Teddy lost in the heavyweight, but he bronzed. So again, I'm still putting France up there as the number 2 country over Kosovo just because I know they have 2 gold medals here, but again, man, you got to put the medal count into some play. Georgia outperformed itself, okay, down here, right? They have 2 here. Boom. Now they're up at the top at 4. They doubled their medal count. Okay, there's a few other countries in here that have done really well. I urge you guys to go into Judo Base and just kind of look at the stats to see where the development is. I know Austria, for example, just hired a brand new coach to help them prepare. They got the coach just before COVID or right kind of in COVID, but she's doing an amazing job with the team. You know, they've been able to pull out 2 medals, which is great for them. There's a few other countries in here that has since centralized. Canada, 2 medals in the females, a possible for a different one. You know, they had a 5th place in there with the Canadian at 73. Antoine at 81 always has the ability to medal. So just looking at this overall thing, another one to point out, Israel, 2 medals. I'm not seeing Israel on this side of the board. Russia did take a hit. They have 3 medals over here and then 3 bronzes. So they actually had 2 gold medals in 2016 and now they're settling for bronzes. I think a couple of their players were really lackluster, just losing in the first round early to some tough players. But that's kind of the overall view of the Olympics. I'm really excited to see the team event tonight. So be on the lookout for my breakdown video tomorrow on the team event.